project on the 370Z is hood pins. I have a Seibon carbon fiber hood, and according to Seibon, I need to have hood pins as a safety precaution. This hood is still secured by the original OEM latches, and it also has the little catch once the hood comes part way up. Those are the original parts that are designed to keep the hood down, but you also have to keep in mind that there's a bit of a lip here that could catch some air. This car is going to be going in excess of 100 miles an hour on a racetrack, and if the hood were to fail because of the fiberglass reinforcements underneath where those bolts are that are holding it all together, if those things were to fail, it would be a really bad situation. I'm not sure how people are with tech as far as composite hoods, so I want to make sure that I have the proper safety precautions on this. And what I went with to some degree were these OMP units. Actually, there's very little of them that I actually used, but we'll discuss that. This project is a lot more complicated than I thought it would be. If the hood were flat, it would be a whole different story. But this hood is domed very significantly. It's got angles laterally and front to back. It's a very complex thing, and since it's so domed and those hood pins are starting all the way down here, I ended up not being able to use the hood pins that I originally bought. I had to go with something much larger, but we'll discuss that. I'll go through step by step with you how to put these on. You may or may not choose to go this particular route, but if you do go this route, I'll show you the challenges that I had. I've already gotten started on this. There was a lot of trial and error involved. I'm going to just walk you through the steps real quick of what I had to do. Now the hood pins I originally bought are OMP ones, and they have this. I think it's an aluminum. I don't know if it's aluminum or steel, but it's a plate. It's not a flimsy plastic thing like a lot of the aerodynamic ones that you see. I was reading some reviews, and some people had some pretty lousy opinions of what they would actually do if you needed those pins to be working. Let's say if your hood tried to fly up, is a little piece of plastic around the hood going to snap off? Or, I don't know. But I figured we'd get something made out of metal, and they look good enough. They came with a 4-inch pin, which I thought was going to be fine. And I think that's like a 16 threads per inch. I thought this was going to work just fine, but come to find out that it's not. So here's the problem. Well, what I ended up doing was buying some 5-inch pins from a specialty manufacturer. You'll see they're definitely longer, and so I will walk you through what has to be done here. And the reason I did these, and then these had a 24 pitch thread count, so I had to go buy extra nuts too. Fortunately, I could still use this, but I still have to drill out these damn holes because this pin is now a little bit too big. Basically, nothing that I bought works, but it can all be fixed. So I'll show you what I'm doing in order to get these hood pins to work. So for starters, I had to find some place to put the pins. There's 2 holes that were already drilled here. They weren't for the little plastic things that stick this big piece of plastic in place. They're just holes that are there for some unknown reason. So I decided to use them. They're slotted a little bit too, so that if I need to move things just a little bit, I can do that. So once I figured out that I was going to mount them there, well, what led me to decide that was looking at the underside of my hood. Look how far it is for me to try to get. I could put, now I'm touching the top of that hood. That's from my, almost from my ring. That's how deep it is. It's about 2.5 inches deep because of the way this hood is built. See how deep that is? It's crazy. So when you go to do this, you have to drill 2 holes that are pretty far apart from each other. And I looked around for anywhere else that I could do this. The only potential other place was in here. This was the only other potential place I could do it, where it's low. But when you come down here, you'll see there's a lot of heavy gauge steel there, and also this plastic core support. I really don't want to be trying to figure out how to get a pin in there. So that's why I decided to go here. So the first step that I did, I mounted these pins as high as I could, and I put a dot of paint on the tip of them. Right? So then when I dropped the hood down, I was able to see a dot, and that dot was, well, right in the center where this hole is. Once I saw where the dot was, I was able to drill a hole for the first layer. So what I've learned from that was I started off drilling a narrow hole, but then when I tried to see where the second dot was going to be, that was really challenging. So I had to keep drilling holes a little bit wider. Plus there's some additional, you can see there's some additional layer of fiberglass or something in there that I had to bust through. If I were to do this again, I would use a hole saw, maybe about 1.5 inch diameter hole saw to try to punch that first layer through. So then once you get the first layer of holes through, you repeat the same process again. You put a dot of paint on each side, and then we drop the hood down. Alright, we're going to drop the hood down, and you'll see I already drilled a second hole. Started to drill a second hole. But you can see that's where the dot was, and based on that, now you're trying to drill a a concave surface through a second layer of fiberglass or carbon fiber, and you can't really see what you're doing. I was able to locate the dot. You can kind of see it there, what I'm talking about, where there's light coming through. But once I drilled that out, I found when I was trying to drill, well, first of all, you need a long drill bit. So you'll see the drill bit that I have here, my hand by comparison, it's a long drill bit. I had to go to the store and buy an extra long drill bit in order to do this, because you know these smaller drill bits, they end about there, and you'll never get in there deep enough with the chuck in the way to get through your hole. So that's one of the necessary tools for this. The other thing that I did was I got this ice pick, circa 1920 something probably. Stole it from my grandma's house when I was a little boy, and I'm pretty old now. Anyway, I use that ice pick as an awl, because fiberglass and carbon fiber, well, the top section is carbon fiber. It's pretty, you could poke a hole in it. So I was able to make enough of a dent in it that when I put the drill bit in, it was able to have something to grab onto instead of wandering, which you definitely don't want. So that's where we're at now. So now that we're caught up on this process, so key things: buy 5-inch pins. I bought it from a specialty manufacturer I found on the internet that does racing stuff. They didn't give me the nuts, so then I had to go to the hardware store and find nuts. So we're still not quite done with this. The next thing we're going to do is drill the hole that's actually going to punch through the hood. So let's do that. Okay, what I got here is about a 1/2 inch drill bit. I got that so that it was just about the same size as this. It's actually a tiny bit bigger, but it'll work just fine. This is going to be the part that's exposed. And yeah, this feels pretty crazy, but I'm going to drill a big old hole right in my hood. There we go. That was uncomfortable. And we'll do the other one. And once I close that, perfect. That's a good result. We'll just have to adjust those pins a little bit. We're going to have to take into account that this thing takes up a lot of space here too. Man, even now, that 5-inch, it's pretty questionable whether it's going to be long enough. I guess we're going to find out here in a minute. We've got 5-inch pins. The hood's not closed right now, but when it is, even those 5-inch pins aren't quite long enough, considering that plate that has to go on there. So I'm going to have to figure something out. First, I'm going to file these in. Alright, so I'm going to see how high I can get these pins up. This is really frustrating. I don't think they make pins higher than 5 inches, for crying out loud. But let's say I do that, and I'm gonna put some lock washers underneath these, so I don't get nervous about that. Let's see how that looks. And now I'm still dealing with the curvature of the hood too. So the outside is higher than the inside because the hood curves. I'm not sure how this is going to work. I might be able to make that work. It's going to be close. Like everything else, the first thing I'm going to have to do is drill out these hood pins a little bit more because they aren't quite the right size I need for those pins. Okay, at least those fit. The other problem is that this hood could sit a little bit lower. That would be great. So those will fit without the plates. But they probably won't fit with them yet. I might end up having to get some steel plates or something to put on there. But with that much curvature, I don't think that's going to work either because those plates would have to be domed a little bit. I don't know. I'm not seeing this working. So there's no way these hood pins are going to work having a bolt on the underside. So what I think I'm going to do is have one of my friends help me out by tack welding those bolts into place on the top, and that will give me enough extra room that I can lift those pins up a little bit and then just use a jam nut to put them both, to hold them both in place. Now we have a result. There's my hood pin, sitting nice. The hole is high enough where I can use it. I'll show you how I got there. A 5-inch hood pin. I had my buddy Neil come to the rescue and weld a nut in place. So I have a few more things to do. I'm going to have to clean that up a little bit and spray it, and then drill a hole for the plastic cover on that, put all that stuff back together again, and then we'll figure out exactly how high that pin needs to sit, and we'll figure out how to do the top section, which is going to have its own challenges due to the curvature of the hood. So this being a beautiful car that I care about, I'm going to clean this up a little bit and paint it. A little bit of paint thinner. I don't know a lot about bodywork, but I do have a few tricks that I picked up in my youth. So if you take a piece of tape, cover half of a piece of newspaper. Remember newspapers? I don't know if you can still get those these days, but anyways, this is some pretty old newspapers. There we go. And then I'll tape off the other side too. Perfect. So the other thing I'm going to do, I have this plastic cover here, so now we're going to have to drill another hole in that plastic cover, which is a great thing about welding that nut on the top, is now I don't have to try to figure out how to get underneath this plastic and put this cover on without cutting a big slice down the middle of it. So this worked out for a number of different reasons. Well, you can never have too many tools. I happen to have a 3/4 inch hole saw right here. I'm going to line that up and hope it works. Not as perfect as I'd like, but I think it's going to work just fine. These pins will go back in here. We'll figure out exactly where they need to sit, and we'll be in business. Get too carried away with that yet. Now the next problem we're going to run into is the angle that this sits at. So it's a very sharp angle this way, and these holes are parallel. We'll probably have to do some work on the seats that they're going to sit on too, to get those things. This is a lot more complex project than it looked like because this is such a complex angle on this hood. So coming up close here, you can see that there's a lot of gap here on the bottom. Very little gap on the top. So that's the beast we're dealing with. So I'm going to figure out how to fix that. Alright, so we're pretty close here. I've just been filing on the left side of this. And the important thing to remember with anything you're doing aftermarket with a car, it's not the be-all end-all, it's the starting point for your solution, and you're usually going to have to do something in order to make it fit. And those are the two real key things to remember when you're modifying a car, doing custom parts. Is one thing is be plan for it to take a lot longer than you thought it would to get your parts. And the second thing is, it's probably not going to fit right the first time. One of the things I'm going to do here is apply some two-sided tape to the back of this. So I'm not actually going to stick this to the part. I'm going to leave the backing on it. But I want to figure out exactly where I need to mount it, so we will do that. So I'm just going to start off with a real basic trim here. I'll come in with a razor and cut this properly after. There we go. And I'll trim this down. That gives me a little bit of padding. Okay, so I got my tape on there. I'm trimming out these holes. So there's that. So now I know the true height of this thing. And I won't be scuffing it every time I play with it. So that's a little bit of safety net there. So now that I have this here, let's see what else we have to do. Actually, that's really close. In fact, how about that? That's going to work right the way it is. Wow. Okay. So this looks ugly right now, but it's going to look really good. Let's get a close-up of that. There we go. So I've had to do quite a bit of work with a file on that piece, but I think I've got it to where I want it now, and it's going to be ready to go. So this has taken a lot of perseverance, but I now have these set up where I want them. Oh, my wife says stick with black because I won't get the paint to match the silver. And she's probably right. So we'll hit this up with a little lick of paint. And we're all set. One other thing I've been meaning to do since I got that two-sided tape, put my Nismo emblem back on. There we go. Sweet. Okay, we're getting to the last phases of this. These things are right where I want them. So I've kind of got them lined up with some tape so I know where they need to go. And hit it with a little bit of degreaser. I'm going to pull this tape off. Now I've been thinking about this, and this this industrial automotive two-sided tape is very, very strong and sticky, and I think I could probably run this without even putting bolts in there. Putting self-tapping screws in carbon fiber or fiberglass, if you've worked with fiberglass much, well, just like anything else, it tends to back themselves back out again over time, and I'm not sure that it's necessarily a better solution to have screws than to just use tape. Besides, these things are going to be held down by these pins. They're not going anywhere. It's not like they're going to fly off. And if they do at some point come loose, I can always go back and put some screws in there. But I think that's going to work. I've managed to do this without scratching my paint at all, which is fantastic. There we go, perfect. So I also need to put these little caps back in to secure this plastic and make sure everything's buttoned up. There we go. Mission accomplished. I don't think I'm going to put any bolts on that. I think they're going to be fine just the way they are. If there's a problem later on, I can always put them in.